All right, good morning. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 12th. Today's Tuesday, January 12th. And we are going to continue talking about theories and hypotheses and critical thinking and reasoning, and then we're going to start talking about variables and how we measure them. Before I get started, are there any questions? Yes?
So for the worksheet yesterday,
There was a worksheet due yesterday. Did you all do it?
yeah.
And did you save your answers but not submit it? Oh, wouldn't that be frustrating? So everybody listen, because you might not have done it this week, but you've got 7 more opportunities to make this mistake, and it's okay as long as you've saved your answers. Save your answers, save your answers, save your answers, save your answers all the time. Only have one window open in SmartSight when you are saving your answers, otherwise SmartSight doesn't know which window it's talking to. If you forget to hit submit, come to me after class, come to office hours, email and let us know that this is an issue. We are able to open it up, you hit submit, and we close it again. So there is no strategy for making for cheating here, that you don't get extra time. You can just submit whatever you've got saved. And about a dozen people do it every week. So as much as you think that it won't be you, it might be you. As long as your answers are saved, then you just need to request, oh, and you just come and you stand with me face to face, and we open it up, you submit it, and we close it. So I hate the idea that there's work trapped in SmartSight that I can't get to and you can't get to, and so let's just go ahead and allow you just to submit it, but only whatever you've got saved. Did that answer your question? All right. Are there other administrative type questions? Yes?
Are we going to have data worksheets also, or just the worksheets?
Okay. No, that's fine. So worksheet 2 is already released, right? It would be a great strategy to have looked at that before class today so that you have an idea of where we're going, and that if you have questions, you can recognize them and answer them. Definitely, after class today, go and work on it and do what you can and bring any questions that you've got to class on Thursday. It is due on Monday. Monday is a public holiday. Be sure you submit it before it's due, before time. We have to have it due before we meet again next Tuesday, so just keeping it on the Monday, even though it's a public holiday. So keep in mind, it's a public holiday, but you still need to get your homework done over the weekend or before the weekend, whenever. You'll have all the material by Thursday and have it submitted. There will also be additional video worksheets. Yes. So there are 3 sets of video worksheets. You've done 1 set. Thank you very much. We are constantly tweaking this class, trying to figure out the best way of communicating this information given the constraints that we have. We've had the video worksheets for about a year now, but they've always been like optional, and the people who needed them didn't do them, or didn't do them until after they'd failed the first midterm. And so this quarter, you guys are kind of the guinea pigs. And I really appreciate your patience with us while we're doing this. Let's require them up front. Let's see if having you go through those up front helps you understand this material. So you've done the critical thinking ones. The next set are on the research summaries, and we're going to get those started. I'll get those out to you today. Okay? And then there's one more set that we'll be doing after the first midterm. Yes?
That I had gotten a couple wrong on the video worksheets, but that email that we got also, so
you got an email that said it's going to be completion, not performance. Yes?
I alluded that we were all getting full credit. So
yep. If you completed them, you get full credit. Because, I mean, the point was to make them just practice and to engage with them And I'm not sure how to do that without like making them worth points, and I would appreciate your feedback. If you have thoughts about that, you're welcome to email me. All right. Are there administrative type questions? No? Okay. Let's jump in. I just wanted to review a little bit. So last week we were talking about theories and hypotheses. Theories are big understanding, our thoughts about the way the world works. And then hypotheses are specific testable statements. So if we have a research question, I wonder if chocolate consumption is related to stress. Can you think about some of your understanding of the world, of how that might be, what that relationship might be? What components do you know about the relationship between chocolate consumption and stress? Yeah?
Stress levels influence chocolate consumption.
Okay, so let's. We don't have to be particularly specific here. Don't we think that chocolate consumption has some sort of chemical, biochemical? Yeah. So eating chocolate equals feeling good. So it tastes good, and it makes us brain chemicals change, and so we feel good. What other things do you kind of know about eating chocolate? Oh, actually, you might feel guilty. This is your understanding of the world. And so we might generate a specific hypothesis when people feel stressed, they will increase chocolate consumption. Would that be a particular hypothesis? There's a single testable statement. We could go out and we could say, how stressed do you feel? How much chocolate have you eaten? And see if those two variables are related to each other. So coming from our kind of understanding of the world that eating chocolate makes us feel good, and there's some sort of chemical brain connection, we could then generate a specific hypothesis. So this is sort of coming from that. We could also say if people eat a lot of chocolate, if they're feeling guilty about it, we could predict that might increase stress. That would increase stress if you're eating a lot of chocolate and you're feeling really guilty about it. That particular part of the theory would generate a very different hypothesis. So we've got two variables. We're thinking about how they're related. This is a great segue into the critical thinking. Screen switcher, could you switch my screens for me? So you've heard Curtis talk to you about critical thinking a lot, right? Curtis knows a lot. Did you know his name was Curtis? Is that on those video worksheets at all? Okay, so previously I've called them Curtis Knows. Curtis knows how to do critical thinking. What I want to do now is I want to go through a specific example and the steps in critical thinking. This should be very similar to how Curtis presented it to you. And I'm hoping that you will be able to really engage with this, and if you've got any more questions about it, to be able to ask them. So this whole class, as I said on Thursday, this whole class is talking about claims about relationships between variables. And I want you to think critically about that in this very specific way. So we're critiquing claims of relationships between two variables, and we're going to be assessing those claims. We're going to be critiquing whether they are well supported, whether they are valid claims, or whether they are, or be able to articulate if a claim is unsupported. So a lot of this is about building vocabulary, building little pet phrases that you will use. Don't make the mistake of reading the word critical and critique and thinking that it's only about throwing things out and criticizing. We also want to appreciate the strengths of a claim and recognize when something has elegantly, completely demonstrated that this is a valid relationship between two variables. So the process of critical thinking is being able to articulate if it's unsupported. And you might have oh, I don't like that, I think it's unsupported, but what we're going to do is practice absolutely putting it into words exactly how we articulate when a claim is unsupported. If that claim is unsupported, we would demand appropriate additional information. This is what would answer this question. This is what would convince me. But it's also the process of appreciating the strengths of a claim to be able to recognize, hey, they did it perfectly. They've done this well. We do believe this claim. So there are 5 steps. What am I being asked to believe or accept? For the purpose of this class, we're going to be giving you examples from research or examples from advertising where they are asking you to believe a claim between two relationships or between two variables. What evidence is available to support this assertion? And so they might present authoritative evidence, or they might present empirical evidence, or they might present scientific evidence. So this is very much going to be just recognizing what in the passage that you've been presented is the claim, and what in the passage is the evidence that they are giving you. Now comes the inventive bit, the challenging bit, the creative bit, the exciting bit, where you have to think up out of thin air. What are other ways of interpreting the evidence? What are alternate explanations? And this is that real spark of creativity where you need to, it's not written in the paragraph, you need to think it up. And there are 100 good answers to every claim that we'll give you. There are 100 good ways of answering this. There are millions of bad ways of answering this. And you're needing to be able to be confident that the one thing that you found is in the good side. For the homeworks and for the exams, we're going to be doing this on most of the homeworks and on all of the exams. You'll just be asked one way. Just name one alternative way of interpreting this evidence. So that even though you could probably generate 5 or 6 from most of these examples, we're just asking you to pick one and stick with it. You then answer the question, what additional evidence would help you to evaluate the alternatives? So how would you design the perfect experiment? How would you address and rule out the alternate way that you have generated? So these two go together. And then the last step, is it true? Have they met the threshold to convince a scientific thinker? So let's go through an example. People who eat Champion cereal for breakfast will be more successful than people who eat Great Gruel for breakfast. So this is a sort of example that you might see in an advertisement. 4 out of 5 dentists approve of our product, or you know, if you eat this product, you're going to be more healthy or more fit or more successful. So to think about this, the claim that's being made is that the predictor variable causes the outcome variable. What's the predictor variable in this case? Cereal type. Yeah, what you eat for breakfast. And what's the outcome variable? Success. So eating one type of cereal will cause an increase in success. So, and maybe here's the evidence that they're giving you, that they've got all of these people. Now, people have pesky individual differences. They've got different ages and different genders and different ethnicities and different intelligences and different experiences. And so in this class and in all social science classes where we're dealing with pesky individuals, we need to make sure that we are making equivalent groups, or we really need to think about how those pesky individual differences might be playing into our research design. So we've selected a group of people with their individual differences. And in this case, and this is often how it's presented in an advertisement, they say, well, the people who have chosen to eat Champion cereal are more successful. And so what they're telling you is that these people who have chosen Champion cereal, you see how they're growing in the Champion box? That's my way of showing you that they're more successful. Okay? And so they say, look, the people who ate our cereal all grew in their success, and the people who didn't eat our cereal didn't grow in their success. Therefore, eating our cereal causes success. That's not a true statement. But that's what they're claiming. That's what they want you to think. All right? Let's think about why we can say that's not a true statement. So the only evidence in this case that they're giving us is that the people who ate this Champion cereal were more successful than those that ate Great Gruel. So they're hoping that you make these invalid implications. Anyone who eats Champion cereal will be more successful. That would be an invalid implication. Another one, you have to eat Champion cereal in order to be successful. So they are presenting you just, these people are more successful, and they're hoping that you make these invalid implications. So let's just go through our steps. Steps 1 and 2. They're claiming that a predictor leads to an outcome. People who use their product will be changed in a specific way. All people who use their product will experience that same change. And they're claiming some evidence, and in this case the evidence was just the ones that had used it were more successful. Yeah?
Is that evidenced by authority?
Well, they could show you. They could show you their bank accounts even and say, look, these people are more successful. That would still fall under. So in this case, I've been a little bit vague about how they've said it, but they could demonstrate that to you empirically. But you still should be going, oh, and we'll get to why. So now we get to we need a spark of what are alternative ways of interpreting the evidence. First off, some rules. You must accept that the findings are true. You must accept that they have discovered a relationship between those two variables. If you just say, I don't believe this is true, that's not thinking critically. So you can't just dismiss the claim. So they discovered a real and a reliable relationship between those variables. Those people were different. The ones that use the product were different in some way. But you must not accept the author's explanation. So we can look for a third variable where we're saying, oh, it's not eating the cereal. Maybe there's another way of explaining this. And we'll go through, let me just go through these and then we'll have a chance to do one where we actually generate them. So is there a third variable that accounts for both of the levels of the predictor and the outcome variable? It's possible that the relationship is reversed. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And we'll also question whether they have measured the outcome well. So these are the 3 rocks we're going to look for. Look under. Let's take a look at how we might do that. So how do we find a third variable? The first question you want to ask yourself is, were the groups equal beforehand? Were they equal at the start? Often, that's a great explanation, a great alternate explanation. So thinking of a specific plausible way that the groups might have been different before they even chose what cereal to eat. Another way of finding a third variable is to what I'm going to call work backwards from the outcome. And say, okay, so there are two groups of people in the world. There are those that are successful and those that are not successful. We know that one of the differences is that they've chosen this cereal, but what are some other differences that might account for this relationship? If you didn't randomly assign the groups to eating the champion cereal or the gruel, then the groups are not going to be the same to begin with. They're going to be different to begin with. And this is called the self-selection bias. If you allow participants to choose which group to belong to, they'll select the group that suits them. They'll select a group for all sorts of different reasons. Different types of people would select different groups. And so saying, I have different groups, and look, they're different. Well, of course they're different. You said that they were different to begin with. So an example of that, if I've got my pesky individuals, some of them are already successful. And they happen to be choosing the different cereals. So showing evidence that the ones that have chosen the cereal are more successful doesn't rule out that they were just different to begin with. Let me show you another example of that. So here are 2 doors and a group of people, and let's let them self-select. And so we could say, all of the people who are in this room are female. Therefore, walking through that door, change their gender to female. Do you see how silly that sounds? That sounds really silly, right? But it's the same as saying all of the people in here are successful, therefore eating the cereal made them successful. A far more likely explanation is they were different to begin with, and that this door has a W on it and this door has an M on it, and that they've self-selected the group that suits them. And so this is this idea of that the relationship might be reversed, that it's not the outcome, the predictor that predicts the outcome is actually the other way around, that being female made them choose that room. So let's try this. This was just a couple of months ago. Guys who tuck in their shirts are happier and make more money. Could the secret to happiness in life at work be this simple? This was on the news. So go ahead and take out a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. Can I switch? So what was it was guys who tuck in their shirts make more money. So what's the outcome? Make more money. So we've got one group, so the world is divided into people who make lots of money and the people who don't make lots of money. The world is divided into 2 groups. Those that make lots of money, those that don't make lots of money. One associated variable is what they're claiming. So they said a tucked shirt is associated with more money, and an untucked shirt is associated with less money. Okay, we can't just dismiss that. We have to accept that that is a true relationship. But we're not going to buy that tucking your shirt in is going to make you more money, right? That's the key, is that we're not going to swallow that it's just tucking in your shirt that makes the difference. So we might ask, what are other variables that are also likely to differ between, that you'd put one on one side and one on the other side? Education. So these people over here are going to have more education?
Yes.
So more education, less education, and then you're going to say the people who are more educated are going to make more money. People who are less educated are going to make less money. You also need to tie it to that tucked shirt. So the people who are more educated, you need a plausible. Why do they tuck their shirts and then less educated don't tuck their shirts? So did you say there might be management? Oh, that they have more manners. So they've got more manners. That they are more socially aware about this sort of prestige. So social situations, people who are in formal social situations are going to have their shirts tucked. People who are in formal social situations can afford to be there. People who are in informal social situations, yeah?
Or, formal business situations.
So maybe it's the type of job you've got. If you're flipping burgers, you're going to have an untucked shirt and you're going to make very little money. Whereas if you are, an executive, you're going to tuck in your shirt and you're going to make more money. Do you see how we're doing this? Well, we're generating what other variables might explain this true relationship that people who tuck in their shirts make more money. And you just pick your favorite one and say, I think that the groups were different to begin with. The groups had different jobs to begin with, and that it's the type of job that they had that both led to how they dressed and how much money they made. That's pretty perfect. Did you hear it? Should I write it down? The groups were different to begin with. Those who have more executive jobs will tuck in their shirts and make more money. Those who have less professional jobs will not tuck in their shirts and will also not make as much money. So that would be one specific alternate explanation. We're going to keep coming back and practicing this a lot. She's never going to sit in that corner again. One of those that we came up with was actually suggesting a reversed relationship. That it wasn't tucking in the shirt that makes more money, it was actually kind of making more money that led them to be that the people who are in jobs that make lots of money are required to look professional and have their shirts tucked in. So do you hear how that relationship is reversed? It's not tucking in your shirt that makes you more money. It's having a job that makes money that requires you to tuck in your shirt. Yeah?
So is reversing the relationship an explanation that we can use?
Absolutely, and it goes right along with the groups not equal to begin with. So sometimes you just say, it's going to be their education level, or it's going to be some other thing. But sometimes you might say they were different to begin with. The groups were not equal beforehand; they were different to begin with. And that it was being different that made them choose that outcome variable. So we looked at the groups were not equal to begin with. Here's another way. So this is the second way of finding a third variable. If they're choosing one group to belong to, they might make other different choices as well. Yes?
What's the variation of the groups were different to begin with?
It's very similar. It's sort of the nuance is once we sort of start the study, if you were even if you were equal to begin with, once you start the study, are you going to make other different choices as well? Or are you going to be treated differently as well?
So the study is what's affecting.
Yes. So your example on the homework that you turned in yesterday was using verbal advantage. Yes? And so people might have been different to begin with in their desire to learn more, make more money or to learn vocabulary. But once we started, that they might, that listening to that 15 minutes, actually, this is going along with the groups are not equal to begin with, that they are making other different choices as well. So it's very specifically, okay, the nuance is that it's not that it's like the men versus the women, it's that they are wanting to increase their income, so they're going to take overtime, or they're making other different choices as well, part of their pre-existing differences. Okay? So maybe Champion cereal is branded as really healthy, and that the people who are buying that are also buying other healthy foods, and that it's those other healthy foods that is leading to their success. So you might ask yourself, are there external differences between the groups? So not like an internal difference within each person, like their gender or their education, but differences outside of the participants that would lead to these different choices. You might ask, for instance, if Champion cereal is marketed in different neighborhoods, that if it's only sold in Whole Foods, then the people who go to shop at Whole Foods have access to different nutrition and different education and different other choices as well. So again, if they're not randomly assigned, they will certainly make other different choices, and this is all part of that. The groups are different to begin with. So maybe they're just choosing education as well as choosing Champion cereal. Here's a third way of finding a third variable, and this is the treated, where they treated it in the same way. So once the study started, once you started comparing the groups, was there something else that was providing a confound that were they treated in the same way? So here we think about what's the experience of the participants during and after the treatment. If we assign a group to listen to verbal advantage, they're going to be spending 15 minutes a day listening to language. So we want to make sure that the other group spends 15 minutes a day listening to language, but just not the same flashcards or the same types of experience. So perhaps the Champion cereal has crossword puzzles on the box. And so while they're sitting at the breakfast table eating their cereal, they're also doing crossword puzzles. And it's actually the crossword puzzles that are leading to success. Perhaps Great Gruel takes 3 hours to cook. And so if they're making Great Gruel, they're getting up 3 hours early and they're sleep deprived. And that it's the sleep deprivation that's leading to less success. So it's associated with each of those cereals, but it's not actually the cereal. It's a difference in the treatment, a difference in the way they were treated once we started the study. So then we need to evaluate the third variable. It must suggest something completely different accounts for the relationship. It must be both specific and plausible. It could be a pre-existing difference. It could be a difference in experiences. You need to make sure that you've linked it to both the predictor and the outcome. If you want to say, I think these people ate more broccoli, then you'd have to say why they had access to more broccoli and why eating broccoli would lead to success. So as long as you can link it to account for that relationship. Here's a mistake to avoid. Don't just suggest a mechanism by which the original claim works. So if you just say, oh, well, maybe Champion cereal's got really high in vitamins. Well, that's just endorsing the original claim, and that's not proposing an alternate. So we've looked at the groups were not equal to begin with. The groups were somehow treated differently. The other way that we can critique a claim is to say they haven't really measured that outcome. You know, that for example, with the verbal advantage, there was no mention of income in their measurement. And so, you know, how did you define success? How are you measuring income? And you can critique whether they have measured that outcome sufficiently. And so we can ask, yes, if they're, does it assess all the important aspects of the outcome? Let's put those together again with that same example. So guys who tuck in their shirts make more money. So the source of this was a Fruit of the Loom survey. You should beginning to be going, yeah, I'm really not buying this. 1,000 men asked, do you tuck in your shirt? Yes, no. How much money do you make? That was what they're reporting. That's how they made that claim. And so we need to accept that, yes, the people who say they tuck in their shirt also make more money. We can't just say, I don't believe that. They asked 1,000 people, and this is a relationship they identified. But there's an implied causal relationship. Anyone who tucks in their shirt will make more money. If only you would tuck in your shirt, you would also make more money. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, if you're Hanes, can you sue Fruit of the Loom for making an implied causal relationship?
I don't think you can sue for making an implied causal relationship. We hopefully live in a state where we're really well educated, and we can, as our consumers, we can critique these relationships. They are rampant. They are everywhere. And even NPR makes the mistake of implied. There's some examples that will come up where NPR implying a causal relationship. And I'm hoping that you guys are 300 more people who will go every time you hear an implied causal relationship when they have not established that. Screen switcher. So let's just go through those ones that we generated and see if we can sort them into these categories. So tucked shirt equals more money, right? That was what we were looking at. And the evidence was 1,000 people surveyed. Do you tuck in your shirt? Yes, no. How much money do you make? That's the evidence that's been presented. It was a survey of 1,000 people. So here are the groups. They're not the same at the start. They're going to be making other different choices. They're being treated differently or questioning the outcome. Take a minute, work with a neighbor, think about the ones that we have already generated or generate others, and see if you can think which ones would go in which of those boxes. Let's see if we can pull some answers here. The group's not the same at the start. That's a lot of what we were doing over here, right? And so should we just pick one of those? The group's not the same at the start. What might be, how might they be different at the start? Different jobs. How about they might be making other different choices? Did you find any for that? So they might be choosing education. So why would shirt tuckers choose education? Maybe it was where they were raised. It was kind of that idea of the, if you're raised in a community that tucks shirts, you might be choosing different education options and having better job opportunities. Yeah.
I was going to say the social situations, because they would be choosing to participate in situations socially where they would have to tuck their hair.
Okay, so
That's a good choice for where they're going.
So there are some places where we can go where we really have to tuck in our shirts. If you are choosing to be there, then you are concerned about different things. Maybe you're just kind of you're more aware of your appearance. You're concerned about your appearance, and that's going to mean that you're going to tuck in your shirt. You're going to have these different opportunities because you're going to these places. Also, maybe that you're here, I like this one. Hang on, let me get this one down. So you're concerned about your appearance. And we have to link it to both. Appearance. So that would be, you tuck your shirt, but how about also, you don't want to look like a slacker. If you're concerned about your appearance, maybe you put in extra hours at work and you're sort of making these other different choices.
What about eating the cereal? What are they?
Oh, we were back to the tucking the shirts and the money. The being treated differently. So once you've left your house with your shirt tucked or your shirt untucked, how might you be treated differently?
People may be nicer.
So if you look professional, the people will interact with you differently. You might actually be given different opportunities at work because you look professional.
Couldn't that be proving the hypothesis, though? I mean, that it doesn't necessarily explain why
Okay, so we want to make sure that we're not just supporting the initial hypothesis that it's having your shirt tucked in that causes success. But yes, very good point. That we want to make sure that we're not just doing that. That it's yeah, because that is very much the initial is that if you tuck in your shirt, you will make more money. And I guess, yes, would be, well, is it through looking professional?
Making more money is the question.
So,
I thought that the claim was that just because you're tucking in your shirt, then you're making more money.
right.
What I was trying to say was that maybe it is somewhat related to tucking your shirt, that people can treat you in a more, like in a nicer way, but it's not necessarily, that one necessarily
Yeah.
But doesn't it have to,
that's like a byproduct.
doesn't it have to be related to both the predictor variable and the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
So
Let's see if we can work it out. Tucking in your shirt, you get different opportunities. You take those opportunities and you make more money. And so there's sort of that extra step there, that it's not actually just tucking in your shirt that makes more money, but that you're being treated differently.
So like this societal sort of inclination.
Yes, so
People the better treatment just because they do these.
So let's say, how about if we back it up? If you're well educated, you will tuck in your shirt and get different opportunities. But again, we've sort of gone back to the groups not same at the start. And these are somewhat artificial delineations. I'm really trying to give you ways to think about, rocks to look under, so that you can find something to say. Also, it's not necessarily that you'll be able to find one in each category for each example.
What about if it's, like if you tuck in your shirt, it makes you look like you are of a certain demographic, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and you get better opportunities.
And again, I think that's sort of what that's kind of what Fruit of the Loom is trying to make you think, that it's just tucking in your shirt that will make you more money. And so we want to make sure that we don't just endorse that claim, but that, if you're well educated, you're going to tuck in your shirt and get different opportunities. How about questioning the outcome measure? How did they measure the outcome? They just asked, how much money do you make? Yeah.
I guess Fruit of the Loom probably did this study in America, right? So, because they're an American company. And in America, we have a huge taboo about talking about our income. So if they just ask people off the street what their income was, they're not always going to tell them the right
Yep.
answer.
Yep. So just saying what is your income is not a particularly good method match. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It would be far better if they said, we looked up their tax records. Then you would feel a lot more confident in that outcome. But just saying, how much money do you make? The people, is there a reason why the different groups would exaggerate in different directions? If I'm flipping burgers, I might say, I make nothing. It feels like nothing. If I'm an executive, or if I'm a budding professional, I might over-exaggerate my income. So we've generated some alternate explanations. The treatment was difficult on this one. There wasn't necessarily really this is the treatment beginning and now is the treatment ending. But in other examples, that will be more apparent. Here's the key to how we generate additional evidence. What's the alternative explanation? If we've said they're not the same at the start, we are going to make the groups equal. According to Curtis, how do we make the groups equal? Random assignment. If we are concerned that they're going to make other different group choices, we're going to make the groups equal by random assignment. If we're concerned about the treatment, Maybe, here's an example. Maybe it's not having your shirt tucked in. Maybe the shirts that you tuck in are scratchier or are feel different. That would be getting onto that treatment. So we would want to make the treatments more similar. If we've questioned the outcome, we could suggest redefine the outcome. Let's go through each of those. So, what additional evidence would help you evaluate those alternatives? Oh, that turned off. So you want to make it relate based on that key that we just went through. If you suggest the groups weren't equal, can you design an experiment where you randomly assign them? I know Curtis brings up a couple of, wow, this would be really unethical to randomly assign. And so can you make equivalent groups? Can you match them on the difference that you think? And so this would allow you to, if it is not this difference, I could rule it out. I can rule out this explanation. If you suggest that their groups were treated differently, can you make the treatments more similar, a more appropriate comparison or control group? So you'd want them in the exact same type of shirt and just one tucked in and one not tucked in. You wouldn't want one group in button-down shirts and one group in T-shirts. If you question the outcome, can you propose, I want to see their tax records, an alternate way of measuring that outcome? So those all very specifically go together. And that template that I was using is available on SmartSight so that you can make sure that you're remembering which solutions go with which alternative explanation. And then finally, you're asking if you're convinced. So articulating and appreciating valid conclusions, but identifying and eliminating invalid implications and conclusions. And we can say to Fruit of the Loom that they absolutely cannot imply a causal relationship here. Just because people who tuck in their shirts make more money doesn't mean that it is the tucking in of the shirt that makes more money. Yes? So if you've said maybe they're being treated differently, maybe there's something different about the sort of shirt people tuck in and the sort of shirt people don't tuck in. Maybe it's the scratchiness on your skin that is the difference, not whether or not it's tucked in. You would want to make sure that they're both in the exact same brand shirt and and just one's tucked and one's not tucked. Okay? You wouldn't want one in a t-shirt and one in a dress shirt. Yeah.
So would you, if you were testing that, would you find people who had the same type of shirt that were wearing it untucked and tucked and then survey them? Or would you have one group from generally the same socioeconomic status, give them a pair of each type of shirt, tell one group to tuck it in, tell one group not to tuck it in, and then see how much money they go out and make in a year?
So the question is kind of between these two, where you could answer this by saying, I would recruit 1,000 people and randomly assign them to tuck their shirt in for the rest of the year or to not tuck their shirt in for the rest of the year and see if there's a change in income over that year. Or you can say, I'm going to just look at burger flippers. And within this specific group, so I'm making this sort of equivalent group, I'll have one group tuck in and one not tuck in, and then see how they've progressed in their earnings over a year. Yes?
So the statement, tucking in your shirt makes you make more money, and tucking in your shirt can lead to making more money are two different statements, right?
So we talked a little bit about associative claims and causal claims, and we're going to talk more about what vocabulary. There's a whole page in your book of verbs that imply causation and verbs that are just saying is related to. And I would actually say it leads to is more on that causal. If they'd said people who tuck in their shirt make more money, that's fine. Tucking in your shirt is related to making more money, that's fine. But when they said is the solution this easy, that tucking in your shirt makes you more money, that's then that implied causal relationship. Okay? All right. Let's go through very quickly a little bit of information about reasoning, because I'm expecting you to reason validly. And I'm going to do this in about 5 minutes. Over in the philosophy department, they spend 10 weeks on this idea. So it's definitely an idea worth spending time on. There's a language and logic class. I think I've got it listed under the modules. It will change the way you hear language and think forever. But I just want to make sure that you have the basics of inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, and what are valid inferences and what are invalid inferences. Because I was just asking you to make invalid inferences. So inductive reasoning, you start from a specific case and you go to a general principle. This is a great way to get ideas about research. Hey, that guy has his shirt tucked in and he makes a lot of money. I wonder if having your shirt tucked in leads to making more money. So you're going from one specific case to a general, and wondering if it goes to a general principle. Sometimes true, sometimes not true. In Psych 1, did you hear about the, when they talked about social psychology, the bystander effect? And so this is this idea that if there's only one of you, you take responsibility. If there's 10 of you, nobody takes responsibility, right? And that was from there was one specific incident where this poor woman was raped and murdered, and her neighbors were all watching, and nobody took responsibility to go and get the police. And so the social psychologist reasoned, well, maybe that's that one specific case is true of everybody in all situations, and then did a lot of research on that idea of the bystander effect. Deductive reasoning is the opposite. You start with a general principle and you deduce down to a specific conclusion or a specific prediction. As long as you've got good premises, as long as you follow the logic, the rules of logic, you will get to a correct answer. Let me show you some deductive reasoning. So as long as you follow the rules, you're given some premises that are true, and you can reach a conclusion that must also be true. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, right? So if that is true, and that is true, then this must also be true. So I'm asking you to make sure that you are adhering to the rules and making valid arguments. So typically, all men are mortal. If man, then mortal. And then a statement about whether or not P or Q, so Sophocles is man. And then a conclusion, therefore is mortal. So if we just say all fruit contains seeds, that has given us two pieces of information. First off, it has divided the world into things that contain seeds and things that do not contain seeds. Yes? So there's things that contain seeds and there's things that do not contain seeds. All fruit contains seeds. Where does fruit live in this chart? Absolutely inside the orange contains seeds. And that the class on language and logic, all, every, and some, and you'll never listen to those words the same again. So because it said all fruit contains seeds, we know that fruit lives within that orange circle. So let's put that down over there. So there are two valid inferences. All fruit contains seeds. An apple is a fruit, therefore An apple contains seeds. All fruit contains seeds. Carrots do not contain seeds, therefore carrots are not fruit because they're not in the orange, right? They're outside the orange. Now here's where it gets tricky. There are two errors that look an awful lot like these. All fruit contains seeds. Eggplant are not a fruit. What you need to do is slow down and say, okay, where do eggplant live in our circle world? They live outside of fruit. Do you know if they live inside the contained seeds or outside the contained seeds? You do not know that. You just know that they're not a fruit. But it seems like, or so a common error that we make is therefore they don't contain seeds, is that and this is the difference between all fruit contains seeds and only fruit contains seeds. If the statement had been only fruit contains seeds, then the orange and the green would have been the same size, and there would be no space in the orange that's not also green. Yes? Here's another error. All fruit contains seeds. Acorns contain seeds. Therefore, acorns are fruit. But so all fruit contains seeds is split into this. Acorns contain seeds. Do you know where acorns live? They're inside the orange, but we don't know if they're inside the green or not. And so that would be a mistake. And you can see how they look very similar to the correct ones. You need to really make sure that you're you're making valid inferences. And now you can have bad information. Even if you follow perfect logic, if you've got bad information, you're going to reach a wrong conclusion. All birds fly. A penguin is a bird, therefore a penguin can fly. That's valid logic, but we started with misinformation because not all birds fly. So get out your clickers. Let's see if we can recognize these. All right. So married people live longer. This person is married. I think he will live a long time. Is that inductive that's going from a specific and generalizing about, I wonder if this is generalizes to others? Is that deductive that's going from a general principle and making a prediction about a specific? Or is that neither? Oh, good. All right, I'm seeing a bunch of you there. Go ahead and put in your best guess. And 90% of you are agreeing that that sure sounds like it is deductive, where it's going from a general principle and making a specific prediction. This person lived to be 102 years old. He was married. I wonder if married people live longer than single people. All right, go ahead and put in your best guess. You're all great. Again, 90% of you are recognizing that this is going from one specific and wondering if it would generalize to the greater group, and that was what we defined as inductive reasoning. Jim is married and lived a long time. John is also married. He will live a long time. Process of elimination. You all know the answer is C. Because we're going from one specific to another specific. That's not logic. Okay? All right. How about this? Is this valid? Is this valid logic? So every genius is untidy. Splits the world into people who are tidy, people who are untidy. Where do geniuses live? In the untidy side, right? Is there room for other people in the untidy side? Because it doesn't say only geniuses are untidy. This man is untidy, you know he's on the untidy side, but you do not know if he's a genius or not. He probably wants you to think he's a genius. All right, great. Okay, I think we've got to the end of Module 1, which was on reasoning and theories and hypotheses. So I would like to have the end of Module quiz, and then we'll have a few minutes to start Module 2. Okay? Other questions? You've done homework, you've done readings, you've come to lecture. All right. That's great. I'm seeing most of you there. Final answers. Scientific knowledge is a combination of empiricism and rationalism. All right, and I'm seeing most of you there. Logic and reasoning is rationalism. All right, and I'm seeing most of you there. And falsifiability is research should be capable of producing results that do not support the hypothesis. Okay, I'm seeing most of you there. And the null hypothesis always states that there's no relationship, that there's no difference, and so it would be not related, that last one. Yes. Yes.
That you should be able to reject the hypothesis or prove it wrong. Is that the research that works then, or is it null hypothesis?
So we're generating null hypotheses, and we're also generating research hypotheses. When it comes down to it, in a few weeks, we'll figure out that we can really only test the null hypothesis, and that is why we're generating it. And that we make our decision based on whether we can reject the null hypothesis. Okay? All right. We've been talking about variables and claims. Let me go through some of the definitions. So a variable is any characteristic or quality that varies. We might be measuring it, or we might be manipulating it. every variable in science must have an operational definition. Every time you are communicating about your variables, you communicate exactly how you have measured it. So it's not enough to say income. Income is your variable, but you need to operationally define it. And how Fruit of the Loom operationally defined income was, we asked people how much money they made. But we decided looking at their tax returns would be a better way of operationally defining income. So we were querying the operational definition. So you precisely communicate exactly how the variable was measured. Variables must vary. If there's only one level, it's a constant. So in the Fruit of the Loom survey, they only talked to men. Gender was not a variable. So every variable, I mean, every variable that we can think of could have multiple different definitions. Here's some so here are some ideas of how well we might generate some variables that would affect a person's behavior. We might think about external things like the weather or their housing status. We might think about physiological things like their fatigue or their hunger. We might think about emotional things, whether they're stressed or depressed or anxious. We might think about cognitive things, their thoughts, their beliefs, their ideas about the world. We might look at their previous behavior, the choices that they've made, the actions that they're engaging in. We need to measure variables. We've got 3 basic tools in our tool bag as social scientists. We can directly observe behavior. This is perfect if what we want to measure is an action or performance or an archive. So observing actions, observing performance on a test, for instance. Archives refer to documents that are left over, that were generated by your behavior. So looking at your tax records is looking at the archives of your income behavior. We can ask the participant to tell us. We call this self-report behavior, or measure, self-report. This is great if we want to know what their attitude to something is, what they believe about something, how they feel, what they remember about something. Best way of getting at those types of variables would be to ask them self-report. We can monitor physiological changes. So we can monitor brain activity, or we can, I think in this case we're looking at the galvanic skin response, where we're seeing how sweaty your palms are and how anxious you might be or how much stress you might be feeling. So those are the 3 basic tools that we've got in our toolkit. We can observe. That's great for behaviors, for actions or performance. We can ask, self-report. That's great for attitudes and beliefs. We can monitor physiological changes. So if I give you a test with 40 multiple choice questions, each question has a correct answer and incorrect distractors. You record your answer choices. I count how many you answered correctly. Is that self-report? Is that physiological? Or is that observational? All right, and I'm seeing most of you in there. And there's I'm glad you guys made this mistake, because we're going to learn from the mistakes. All right. Classic mistake. Don't do it again. When you took the SAT, did they ask you, do you feel prepared for university? No. Oh, they didn't ask you that?
I think so.
Or did they observe your behavior and you observe your performance on a test? So a lot of times when you think about, oh, it's pencil and paper, there's a mistake of thinking pencil and paper equals I'm just asking about their beliefs or asking about their attitudes. Yes? Is that what you were thinking, the 25% of you that put self-report? That as it was pencil and paper, it was self-report. This is performance on a test. On the midterm, I'm not going to just ask you how well do you think you learned this material, because otherwise you'd all say 100%, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to set questions that will allow me to observe your performance. Okay? How about this one? I give you a second multiple choice test, but none of the questions have a correct answer. I measure your electrodermal sweat response on your left hand as you progress through the test to measure emotional arousal. So you've had that situation, right, where you're taking a test and you're like, oh my God, there's not a correct answer there. Makes you feel really confident, doesn't it? So what am I doing in this case? Great. You guys are almost there, and you're all agreeing that I am measuring the electrodermal activity, your galvanic skin, your how sweaty your palms are, and that is monitoring a physiological change. I give you a separate form that asks how confident you felt with each answer given on both tests. You record your confidence levels on a 5-point scale. 1 is low, 5 is high. Do you hear the difference between that and I give you a test where there are right answers and I count how many answers you got right? This is self-report, attitudes, opinions, emotions, feelings, right? How did that feel? All right. So variables have levels or values. Sometimes we measure variables in categories. We call these then categorical variables. These are the group labels are words. They differ in quality or kind. Sometimes we measure variables continuously along a continuum in numbers along a scale. These are called continuous variables. You're going to practice every single variable you come across this whole quarter. Was it categorical or continuous? Categorical or continuous? Categorical is groups, words. Continuous is along a number line where there's a quantity or amount. I've got a little note here that this may be truly continuous. Like if I said, I'm going to time you how long it takes you to answer this question. You could end up with any value along those in seconds. If I say, how many full siblings do you have? That's going to be a value. It's going to be a number. It's going to be 0 or 1 or 2 or a dozen. But it can't be 3.5. So, but that's still, we could still, those are still meaningful numbers, even though they're what we would call discrete. We could still say the average number of siblings in this group is 2.7. So let's practice that. If I ask you about your household living arrangement, and here are the options, either you say, I live alone. Oh, so these are actually the answers. You're either going to say categorical or continuous. I don't really care about your household living. If you define household living arrangement as, endorse one of these options, have we measured that categorically or have we measured that continuously? Great, I'm seeing a bunch of you there. And you all seem to be agreeing that those are categories, they're groups, they've got words or labels. And to contrast that, I could ask, how many people, including yourself, live in your house, and have it as any positive whole number. And in this case, yes, very nicely done. You've made that, you're recognizing that that's continuous, it's numbers, it's along a continuum. All right, great. See you on Thursday.